in Nevada doing some work, and he was hoping to find a computer so he could join us, but I don't know
Oh,
if he wasn't optimistic he was going to be able to pull it off. I don't know what the connectivity is like out there. So, hello, Mike.
Hello, how you doing?
Well, fair to Midland.
Good. Gotta try to put up a different background here.
Feels like your background is what it feels like around here. We're 56 degrees today.
We weren't doing it quite that hot, but it's supposed to be in the 60s and maybe as high as 70 next week.
Wow.
So this will be happening, and, and
Yeah,
then we'll get snow.
yeah. I'm afraid of that because a couple of years ago we had a similar circumstance, and the all the apple trees in the orchards blossomed and then froze out. That was the end of the apple crop.
Yeah, I pruned rose bushes this afternoon, and they're all sprouting. I mean,
Yeah.
probably a bad idea pruning, but we'll see.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are in a La Nina winter,
Right.
such as such as it is.
We had our one shovelable snow though, about a week and a half ago or so.
Is it all gone now, or
Oh yeah, it was gone in about 3 days. We had
well, we had a
maybe 4 to 6 inches.
uh, we had that bomber spell in January where we got a sequence of snows. I don't know what did we end up with. What, about 20 inches? We ended up with about 20 inches, and then it got brutally cold for a week or 10 days. It really felt like January, and then it all went away.
Yeah, our last
Yeah,
two
there's still a few drifts here and there, but not much.
we had one shovelable snow last year, and then this year, and they were about the same depth. You have to find a
Uh,
6 inch deep drift.
yeah. Well, Park City just got 40 inches of snow.
I noticed they were getting it.
Yeah, and that could impact some things, which I'll talk about. But we'll see. If it's not like it was out there last year, we may luck out. But
Yeah, it's
they
very
had
hard to very
they
hard
had
to
record snow out there last year, and they even had to close down some of the chairlifts because there was insufficient clearance
yeah.
between seriously between the snow and the chairlifts, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
We got a message from Brian Leach this afternoon indicating that a couple of the presenters wanted to change what they sent him. So who knows? We may have some more updates coming on the program.
No
But
problem.
he, he was expressing a certain amount of despair that things were a little more liquid than he had hoped them to be. But still, it looks like a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, the program looks really like a strong program.
Yeah. I think it's the first time since the international we've had 30 presenters. I could be wrong on that, but I can't remember any other conference with 30 presenters. I take it we didn't hear back from Giroux. Hmm? Lynn has about as much time invested in this as I do. In fact, maybe more. So she may be kibitzing from the sidelines here if she disagrees with anything I've said.
Eric's already finished his presidential speech.
Who did?
Eric,
Oh, of course.
and he's getting
And
his first two articles for the newsletter
can
outlined.
he can he divulge what it is? Or can you divulge what it is?
Poetry.
Poetry.
Interesting. It's continuing on for Mason Coggins.
I was
Yeah, I was gonna
say,
say.
yeah, Mason Coggins was the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sully's buck. He could recite Sully's bucket from memory
You'll
and
have to
others.
ask him. He's got several.
Actually, I've got, and I can't remember the title of them. I've got two paperback books that were published. Golly, I'd have to say mid 20th century by a guy. I can't remember if he was from California or Colorado. But he was both a cartoonist and a curator of poetry, and they're wonderful. Um, and I can't remember where I found them, but I have two mint copies of these little paperbacks of Miner's poems, and they're terrific. And the cartoons in them are terrific.
He's been interlibrary loaning stuff.
Ah, I think these books contain the first printing of the poem entitled "The Other Shift."
Well, he's going to be a little bit late tonight. So, but you can ask him a little bit later which ones he's got.
Oh, maybe I want to surprise. Maybe I'll preserve the surprise. No good, Peter. Well, you won't be on camera, so. Well, unless you want to see it. You've seen it before, though, right? Really? Now what happened? Has anybody else been following the big helium find in northern Minnesota? That's probably the quirkiest thing going on in the mining world right now.
No, whereabouts is that, Mark?
It's up in Babbitt, up north of the
Oh,
Masabi Range. They were doing some drilling for nickel, copper, platinum, palladium kind of stuff, and they got down to 1,800 feet, and it blew the top of the well off. They were afraid it was another methane um, pocket that they'd hit, so they abandoned the well. And they came back 5 days later, and it was still blowing. And they finally decided it wasn't methane, and they sampled it. Turns out it's 10% helium,
Wow.
probably the highest percentage of any producing well in the world right now. And there's an outfit called Pulsar Helium that's up there drilling another well, uh, just trying to test the resource. It's obviously some kind of trap.
Yeah, because
But sorry.
that geology is pretty weird for that kind of stuff.
Well, it is, but they think apparently they think on the big mid-continent craton that there's a big stable trap for these gases that are percolated up over the millennia. The thing that's unusual, of course, is the high percentage of helium. It's unprecedented. So
Yeah, right.
there's great optimism. They were drilling at a pretty brisk rate last I heard, and we're hopeful to reach that horizon about now. But I haven't heard anything further about it.
Wow. That's the
So,
second time today I've heard about Babbitt, Minnesota. I worked there once.
Yeah.
I met a woman whose husband was from Babbitt, and now we have the helium find. Wow.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that you'd expect, but
Yeah, I've only got two. We're not to let you listen to it.
That's all right.
I didn't think you'd charge up my earbuds.
That's not bothering me. I'm concentrating on this.
Hello, Sylvia.
Hi, I was muted.
I Sylvia.
Hi, that's beautiful flowers in the background.
Yeah, they're gonna start blooming here in Washington, D.C. next week.
Wow.
At the rate we're going.
Well, we got plenty of snow. I wish we could send it to you.
Glad somebody's getting it. We've actually had a lot of rainfall. Last year we were about 20% down for the year, and we are 50% up for January and February. But not only one. I was telling Mark, only one of them was shovelable snow.
What was the rest?
No, he had
Shovelable?
rain.
Oh,
Ed's asking Ed has actually just gotten home, so he will be here. That's great.
It is fixing to have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Hello, Ed.
Hello.
Are you finding more people in the cemetery, Sylvia?
Yeah, actually, I need to update. I need to update you. We're talking about the Caribou Cemetery. I think we've got about a dozen people identified and keep getting some more photos. They're trickling in. So photos of old headstones, that really helps. So
Yeah.
I'm going to put together a presentation about how we're using historical photos to identify some of these sites. So when I get that done, I'll send you a PDF of it.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see. We haven't really gotten back into doing the last couple people in Friedensville or Colesville, but just the other day, I'm reading this book, the Married Widows of Cornwall, and it's very interesting. It's somebody's doctoral dissertation converted into a book. So there's a lot of numbers and a lot of statistical stuff. And of course, we had a lot of Cornish miners that came across without family.
Yeah.
Many of them stayed. Few of them took up with local women, although that wasn't the general pattern. Most of them were just trying to make out, and they tried to send remittances back to the old country. However, I found three of the four Harry brothers who are famous in California mining, and one who is famous in Pennsylvania. And they were all originally going out to California without their spouses. The spouses did follow them eventually.
Interesting.
And there was a Richard Trevithick, and I don't think it's the same one who is of steam engine fame, but supposedly he didn't send any money to his wife for 7 years or something like this.
So I bet he didn't get any pasties if he went back.
Yeah, I tell you, it's an interesting book just because you don't realize how much of a social safety net of sorts there was, and but it was really two-pronged. They had sort of welfare programs that were administered mainly by the local jurisdictions, and if one of those decided not to support you, your other choice was the workhouse. So that was the married wives or abandoned wives or whatever, however you would want to view it, were quite creative in ways, and there was a social stigma, of course, attached to being a pauper of sorts, and so they tried everything to not be kind of labeled that, at least in their little communities. A lot of them had family who helped them. They moved in with other family members, which helped them with child care. Some of them went to work in the mines, mainly on the surface, wild maidens and the like. And others started little businesses, grocery stores and grocery businesses of sorts.
Okay, we're at time now. We have an excellent turnout today. And I'm sure it has to do with the topic, but just in case, if anybody can raise their hand, I was late in getting the emails out. I didn't do it until yesterday. Normally I do it on a Sunday. If y'all could, anybody who saw it prefers to get their reminder emails on Monday, could you just raise your hands? That's down at the bottom. There's a little raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll continue with Sunday because I figure people seem to check their emails on the weekends or
Yep.
not. Any more hands? Y'all don't care when I send it out?
Oh, we care.
Well, I'll continue to send them out, but okay. All right. Thank you. And now for Mark, are you ready?
I am ready. I'm going to share screen here, I guess. See if we can get that up. And
The meeting's gonna be in Park City, Utah, June 5th through the 10th.
all right. Well, we were all heartened, I think, last June in Socorro that it's apparent the MHA conference concept has survived the pandemic. So, can everybody hear me all right? Hello, hello? Oops.
Coming in fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Very good. Well, just a few things preliminarily. And I got away from my first slide here a little, and I'm going the wrong direction. No, I'm going the wrong direction. Doggone it. And I don't know how to get back out of here. maybe the stop share. Well, you know, the other thing that's a problem here with this, I'm going to start this over because it appears that the PowerPoint is churning along all by itself rather than on my prompt. And I thought I had turned that off, but anyway, we'll go quickly and we'll see what we can do. Well, it hasn't backed up, so let me try. I apologize. This is not my forte. And we'll get it sorted out here momentarily.
Using the your arrows to go back doesn't work for you?
Well, there's no arrow on my screen when I
No, the
use
arrows
it.
on your keyboard.
Oh, using that. Okay, well, maybe that will
Give
work.
that
Let
a
me
try.
try that. Let me try that. Ah, that does seem to do it. All right. There we go. Sorry for the false start there, folks. Let me just talk about a few preliminaries. The MHA website has a lot of detail on the conference as it stands, and there will be a lot more early in March. And that's roughly when the spring newsletter will hit, and that will have registration in it as well. There will be paper registration forms in the newsletter, and there will be an online registration form link on the website. The paper registration form, you'll do your registration for the general conference and the various a la carte selections for the various events, and then send a check. If you do it online, it will be a similar matter, but the transaction will be processed by Square, so you can use your credit card. There is an added service fee for Square. I think what, Lynn, 3%? Something like that, just so you know that, for that convenience. The registration deadline is May 5th. And the reservation deadline for the conference hotel, which is this, the DoubleTree Hilton Euro Resort. We've reserved a block of conference rooms there at a special rate of $169 per night. The reservation deadline for that conference rate is May 5 as well. So if you're planning to come, it's a good idea to get your room reserved. We've beaten the bushes for other lodging options that we're confident that we've secured the best rate in Park City for lodging. So join us at the Euro Resort. It's a big facility. There's plenty of room, and get those reservations in. Our program committee, Brian Leach and Jen Dunn, have done a spectacular job. We've actually had to bump our sessions out. We are going to have sessions all day Friday and all day Saturday, rather than the traditional day and a half. We have 30 presenters, and the preliminary program is now up on the website. You can link to it. You can download it. It's a remarkably good program, and I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised by the scope and depth of the papers that will be presented on Friday and Saturday. So take a look at that program. It is up now, and it's a preliminary program. Brian told us today that he's already gotten emails from two of the presenters that they want to change things, and he's a little flummoxed by that, but that's going to happen. This is our conference room at the Euro Resort. It will be set up a little bit differently for us, primarily because we're going to have a couple of the meal events in there too. So in order for the quick change artists there to shift it from a conference facility to a banquet facility, we're going to have a slightly different configuration than what you see here, but we will have the 2 screens and the platform and podium and so on for the presenters. Well, now let's go to hang on. Our hosts in Park City are the Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History, and you'll learn a lot about them. They are one of the more active local mining history groups that I've ever encountered. And they're in an unusual environment. They're operating in a town that's basically a company town again. The Ski Corporation owns and operates most of the old historic mining properties as part of the ski resort. So it makes a very challenging environment for them to do mining history in, but they've been very, very successful. The Friends are affiliated with the Park City Museum, which you see on the lower right side of the screen. It's an old firehouse. Part of it is an old firehouse. And we want to encourage you to visit the museum. Your registration fee includes admission to the museum. Your conference credentials will be your ticket to the museum. So we encourage you to visit. They have some excellent mining displays and other historical displays about the Park City environs. We're going to be busy this week, but carve out time to make that visit to the museum. One of our first events Wednesday night. Actually, I should point out that this conference is stretched just a little bit. We're actually starting Wednesday evening, and there will be a post-conference field trip on Monday. So we're a 6th event technically. This is the Historic Miners Hospital in Park City. The community has invited us to come to the Miners Hospital Wednesday night for a formal community welcome. Park City's Mayor Nan Worrell will extend the city welcome to us. It's an interesting building for a couple of reasons. The Federation, WFM, built it for the miners in 1904, and it operated as a union museum until the 1930s, when it was sold off to a private clinic. It fell into disrepair and narrowly missed demolition, and it was moved from its original site to this site in the 1970s to avoid being demolished. This is part of a city park, and it's been completely renovated, and it was originally the city's library. That's since relocated, but the community center will be available to us for this reception. So we encourage a good turnout at that event, because the community is rolling out the red carpet for us. And here's Park City, or downtown Park City, and it will look familiar to most of you that have encountered mining towns that have turned into ski towns. And there's a lot to see up and down the street. It's of course very upscale nowadays, but a lot of the historic structures survive and have been repurposed, and it's fun to walk up and down the street. And I should comment, Park City parking up here is at a premium. But Park City has an excellent free bus service, no charge. So people should avail themselves of that bus service if they're going to go from the Euro Resort to downtown. We're going to have on Thursday our Park City tour, and logistically it's kind of difficult because the various sites we intend to visit are scattered across the landscape. What we're going to do is have 2 smaller buses instead of 1 large bus. I think they're right around 35 or 38 passenger buses. And the buses are going to go to the different sites individually, and then they'll overlap eventually. One of the stops is the Daily West head frame, and you'll hear a paper about the saving of that head frame. The Daily West, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on history here because you're going to get a full platter of that in the conference, but just a little background. The Daily West sits over a 2,100-foot shaft. The steel head frame was built in 1914 after the wood head frame burned. But what happened short term is that the shaft collar collapsed and a 40-foot crater under the head frame developed and it toppled over. That was in 2015. And there was real concern that that was the end of the Daily West, which had been an iconic landmark in Park City for many years. But the Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History and others started a campaign to rescue the head frame. And they, in combination, raised about $500,000 to repair the steelwork and re-erect the head frame. It's not directly over the shaft anymore. They put in new footings for it a little bit downhill and brought in two of the largest cranes available in Utah to re-erect that. So we'll stop at the Daily West and hear a little of that story. We'll stop at the Ontario number 3 in Ontario Canyon. The Ontario mine is a very storied mine in Park City history. It started operations in 1872 and ran basically continuously until it was closed, operations here in 1982. And then it briefly, interestingly enough, it briefly operated as a tour mine from about 1995 to 1999, but there have been no operations there since then. But we'll get a look at that, and hopefully we'll also get into the hoist house at the Ontario 3. The Spiro Tunnel, which is almost right downtown, it's in a little business development known as Silver Star. The Spiro was driven as a drainage tunnel between 1916 and 1924, and it was basically a round-the-clock project. Spiro is 13,650 feet long into Treasure Mountain, and it drained all the mines uphill from there. Interestingly enough, it was used as a skier subway in the late 1960s. They operated a train, and if you go to the museum, you'll see some of those train cars to take skiers from basically city level to the foot of the Thames shaft, where they rode the cage up to the top of the mountain and went up and skied down. It didn't last real long. It wasn't real popular for a couple of reasons. One, it was pretty wet, and skiers would get to the top of the mountain soaking wet from all the drippage from the mine. But they also ran an underground museum in there briefly in the 1970s. Right now, however, it's been rehabbed and provides a good percentage of Park City's domestic water supply. Below the floor that you see here is the actual drainage channel for the water coming out of the tunnel. And just downhill from the portal is a brand new water treatment plant. As you can imagine, there's quite a bit of dissolved metal in this water, and they've got some pretty sophisticated treatment facilities there to control those metal issues. But in any event, I'm told we're going to get into the tunnel. I don't know how far back we're going to be able to go, maybe 300-400 feet, probably through this rehabbed area and into some of the actual historic tunnel. But that ought to be interesting as well. Now this one is probably the crown jewel of the tour, if we can get to it. The Silver King Coalition mine. And this particular image shows on the right the town lift, the town ski lift. And immediately to the left of the town ski lift are the tram towers for the Silver King Coalition. The ore that came out of the Silver King was trammed down to the iconic Silver King Coalition terminal building in town. Unfortunately, that was lost to fire in 1981. But if everything works out, we're going to travel up to the Silver King Coalition mine by riding this chairlift. I don't think we've ever done that at a conference before. Now, the joker in the deck is snow. Last year, Park City had record snowfall, and this chairlift did not reopen for hikers and mountain bikers until the end of June. If that happens again, we're going to be out of luck. If it's a normal snow year in Park City, the trails should be open for hikers and mountain bikers by early June, and this lift will be open and we will ride it. Unfortunately, the road that goes up to the Silver King Coalition is good until you're about a mile short of the mine, and then there's a real sharp turn, and there's some question. In fact, there's significant doubt the buses could negotiate that turn. So we're entirely dependent on snow as to whether we can get up to the Silver King Coalition. We're hopeful we can, because this is what's up there. The mine structures are largely intact, although they did suffer quite a bit of snow damage last year. The internal head frame that you see here on the left is spectacular, but it too was failing. The collar of the shaft was failing, and the footings for the head frame were failing. And just this past year, the Friends succeeded in resetting the footings for that head frame and capping the shaft, stabilizing the collar. So that has been saved as the Daily West was saved. So if we can get up there, you will see these features. In addition, in this building is a flat rope hoist and a compressor, all largely intact, a small machine shop, the miner's dry, and so on and so forth. It's really quite spectacular. The Silver King was actually the second major discovery in the Park City area, and it closed in 1953 due to low metals prices. This is the Silver King mill on the lower right-hand corner. You will see that from the mine site. We will not go down to it. There's really not a whole lot of reason to go down to it because it's been stripped bare inside. It's basically an empty shell, unfortunately, but that's the way things are. I threw this in initially because if we don't get up to the Silver King, we are going to take the buses to a trailhead and hike about a half a mile. It's pretty level hiking trail, by the way. It's not much up and down hill. We'll hike to the Judge Tunnel and the Alliance Mine. These are also fairly storied mines in the history of Park City. The Judge Tunnel also was a drainage tunnel and works that way today. It's also part of the city municipal water system. It'll be a nice little hike. If we do get up to the Silver King, we probably will not visit the Judge Tunnel and the Alliance Mine, but we're keeping that in our pocket just in case we need it. We're going to have a box lunch at Rotary Park midday. If the buses happen to rendezvous there, we'll all have lunch together. If not, we'll do it one bus at a time. But again, it'll be two buses of about 35 people, and we'll be wandering amongst these various landmarks. On Saturday afternoon, we've arranged a tour for, was it 20 people, Lynn? For 20 people at the Glenwood Cemetery in Park City. Unfortunately, due to scheduling constraints, this is going to overlap with the 2 afternoon sessions on Saturday. But if the tour appeals to you, it'll be well worthwhile. It's going to be led by the Park City Museum's Director of Education, Diane Knispel. The museum has acquired the cemetery and maintains it. It was originally chartered by a number of fraternal organizations in Park City, and many of Park City's first families rest there. It's an idyllic place. It's heavily wooded. There's a little mountain stream that runs through the cemetery. Be a fascinating tour. It'd run about hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, and that would be a caravan car drive over to the cemetery grounds. Sunday, we're going to take a bus load down to Eureka in the Tintic. And I suspect everybody that's participating in the Nuggets tonight has at least heard of Eureka in the Tintic. It's a remarkable mining camp, and the town is pretty authentic. It's not a boom town anymore by any means, but it has real character. We will start our visit at the Tintic Mining Museum, but we'll also stick our nose in the city hall that you see down in the lower right-hand corner. Tintic Mining Museum is the old rail depot. After we're done at the museum, we're going to take a quick run down to the Bullion-Beck head frame, which you see on the right. And that's been slightly relocated, again, because of shaft stability issues. Our guide, I should mention that our guide on this tour is Ian Wright. Ian is with the Utah Cultural Site Stewardship Program. He's a Eureka native, and he knows the story of this camp better than anyone I've ever encountered. He and his dad are scholars of the Tintic, and Ian will talk to us a little bit about the remarkable story of the Eureka mine wars while we're down near the Bullion-Beck headframe. We're going to have lunch, a sit-down lunch, and then we're going to go to the Chief Consolidated mine. Again, the Chief Consolidated is one of the big four in Eureka. It's really a remarkable place. Unfortunately, the head frame collapsed there a number of years ago, but many of the other buildings are intact, although they've suffered some recent damage, unfortunately. The Chief Consolidated was developed by the Walter Fitch family, and they left a real personal imprint on the city. Ian will tell us a lot about that, but they had their own family residences there. They had their own family cemetery there, and so on. Quite remarkable. This mine was operated from the 1930s into the 1950s. We'll be able to go into the hoist and compressor house, which you see images of it here, and the machine shop. If you like heavy iron, you will see a lot of it at the Chief Consolidated. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see something like this. When we're done at the Chief Consolidated, we'll take a hike up the hill to the Eagle and Bluebell mine. The Eagle and Bluebell was a silver lead gold mine. It operated until 1955, and the head frame you see there is over a roughly 1,800-foot deep shaft, and has a flat rope hoist. The ore bin that you see on the right is all that remains from a really, really impressive structure that's unfortunately gone. But even this remnant is quite striking, and you'll get a chance to look at it and take photographs. It's a very interesting spot. Then we're going to go over to the East Tintic a little bit. Some of you are very familiar with the Bergen and maybe the Trixie. The Bergen is on the right, the Trixie head frame is on the left. We weren't sure we were going to stop here. The operators of the current operators of the Trixie and technically the Bergen, although the Bergen's not in operation, but those operators are Tintic Consolidated Metals and a Cisco Development, and they are major sponsors of this conference. So Ian did a little sweet talking and has negotiated access to the mine yard at the Bergen. So we will be making a stop in the mine yard at the Bergen, which is on the right here. And the East Tintic is really an entirely different sort of place than the mines around Eureka and to the west. The geology is different, the ore is different, and certainly the history is different. Activities started there in about 1916 with discovery of the ore bodies that became the Tintic Standard Mine. That mine was largely exhausted in 1946, and they kind of thought that the sub-district was washed up. But some other discoveries were made in the 1960s by looking deeper, and the Bergen was one of those. It was owned by the Chief Consolidated, but it was leased to Kennecott, and Kennecott made a lot of the discoveries there. There were some limited operations there off and on. I'm not going to go into the long history of it here because it changed hands and operators many times. But we'll get there. We'll get on the grounds there. We may be able to swing down past the Trixie head frame. That's where the action is currently. They've found some very high grade gold in the Trixie. And by that, I mean in the hundreds of ounces per ton. Pretty eye-opening. But the current interest is copper, and there's evidence that there is economic copper deeper yet. So we'll stop there. And we'll also poke around in some of the historic areas of the East Tintic, including Knightsville, or where Knightsville used to be. And you'll hear the story of Jesse Knight, who is probably the most prominent Mormon mining entrepreneur. And again, Ian is an expert on Jesse Knight and Knightsville. Oops. Going the wrong way. I threw this in because we weren't certain we'd be able to get on the Bergen property. We thought as an alternative, if we couldn't get on that particular mine site, that we would go into the valley to the south of Eureka, the little community of Mammoth, what's left of it, and the Mammoth mine. Very historic properties, a very historic community. It's a little problematic because of time constraints. And also the road up to the Mammoth mine is probably something the bus would not be able to negotiate. So we'll kind of keep this one in our pocket. We'll see how time goes. The whole the whole Eureka Tintic trip is going to be pretty fast paced. And I want to make sure everybody understands that. We've got a fairly long bus drive down from Park City and back, which leaves us a fairly narrow window on site to see everything. So we're going to need to be disciplined about getting off and on the bus promptly, and about saving our questions for on the bus rather than standing around with a lot of questions and as the clock runs. The more we chat, the less we're going to see. So in any event, it's going to be a great trip, but it's going to be fast paced and it's going to be intense. Monday, post-conference. We're going to do a car caravan for about 30 people down into Carbon County. And Carbon County is a very historic coal mining camp in Utah. Helper is where we'll make our initial stop. It's a colorful place. You're very much in canyon country as you come off the mountains and down into Carbon County. It's beautiful canyon country. And Helper is like turning the clock back into the late 1940s or 1950s. It's just a very, very quaint and picturesque place. We're going to go first stop to the Helper Museum. It's well curated for a small town. It has excellent exhibits on coal mining, also has excellent exhibits on railroading. If you're a railroad buff, you already know about Helper, and of course the name Helper came from that extra locomotive they put on the coal trains to get them up over the pass. There is a boneyard out behind the museum where you can look at the coal mining equipment. and they have lots of historic photos, lots of artifact. We'll spend an hour or an hour and a half at the museum, and then we'll go to lunch at the Balance Rock Eatery and Pub. And this is built in an old mercantile store, and they serve very good food in generous portions. So nobody will be disappointed with that. We'll go from there. What we're going to have to do is downsize the caravan. I don't care how many cars drive to Helper, but from Helper to Hiawatha, we're going to have to downsize to no more than 10 cars. So we're going to have to cozy up and put our 30 folks into 10 cars, and then we'll drive to Hiawatha. Now, Hiawatha was very much in doubt until last year whether we'd be able to go. It's an old company town. It was run by United States Fuel Company. Its population peaked late 1940s, maybe 1950, at about 1,500, and then declined after that as production dropped. It was down to 43 people in 1990, and now it's essentially vacant. It's interesting on a whole series of historic fronts, not the least of which is it had a very vibrant Greek community there. One thing you'll find about Carbon County is that it's very multicultural. The coal miners came from, I don't know what, Lynn, 20 different countries or something. They actually have them laid out on sidewalk blocks, the various countries that their population came from. There was a plan to restart production in Hiawatha in the 2000s, but it never came to fruition. And now the town is in private hands. It's in rough shape. It's decaying, but of course that's its charm. Or some people would say spookiness. It's got a very post-apocalyptic feel to it. A lot of broken glass, a lot of lumber with nails sticking out of it, and so on and so forth. So it's an interesting place, and it's surrounded by mines. Depending on road conditions, we will try to get to one, possibly two of the mines that supported Hiawatha. I say that because every spring they get floods, and the roads to the mines change year to year, depending on the flooding that they get. So we'll do our best. We have multiple options, and we are very likely to be able to get to at least one of the mines, maybe two. The tour will end there. Folks can drive back to Park City if that's their option. They could stay in the Price Helper environs and enjoy the surroundings there for an extra day. It's beautiful country. Or they can head home. So that's kind of the way we're planning that. Now, there's bound to be questions about the Bingham Pit. The Bingham Pit is not on our formal tour itinerary. We're urging people to visit the visitor center and overlook on their own, either on the way to the conference or on their way home from the conference. And that's the best way really to handle it, given the way it's configured. And we'll have more details on that coming out. But one thing I did want to point out is there's an excellent download or link on the MHA website right now for a excellent, beautifully done visitor guide put together by Jack Crawford specially for us. And I urge you, if you're at all interested in the Bingham Pit, to go and download that visitor guide. It's spectacular. You won't find anything like it at the visitor center there. I did want to take our collective hat off to our sponsors. I'm not going to name them all here. You'll see them listed. Park City will come as no surprise to any of you, is an expensive venue. We would not have been able to put this conference together without the help of a large number of sponsors, many of whom have been very generous. We have sponsors from both industry and institutional sponsors, and they've made this conference literally possible and affordable. And we will have attendees from many, if not most of these sponsors. They'll be wearing distinctive name tags, and I urge you all to chat them up and thank them very much for their support. It's been critical to putting this conference together. I also want to thank our conference committee, Chris Merritt from the Utah SHPO, Sylvia Pettum, Rob McQueen, Brian Leach. All of you have done yeoman service and kept us encouraged when things look bleak, and given us a lot of support as we've gone through this planning process. But we're excited about it. We're excited about the program. We're excited about the trips. We're excited about the venue. And we hope you share that excitement and that we'll see you in June in Park City. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Could I add a few comments since I worked in Utah quite a bit?
Oh, absolutely.
Park City is interesting. At the Ontario mine, there's an interior shaft, the number 5, and it was operating in the 70s, and it had flat rope. So I rode the thing. It was kind of an odd experience. Park City definitely has a lot going for it. It's a lot more scenic than Eureka, or as I'd call it, and the locals will call it Eureka. The Bergen mine was hotter than the hubs of hell. The levels off of it were the 1,050 level, which was dry, the 1,200, which was wet, and the what they called 1,300, which was actually 1,260. And it was the hot water that kept you from working a lot of the places. 130-degree wet bulb seemed to be about as tough as anybody could take. It wasn't fun. The town of Eureka has had a wear and tear. Nature's not been kind to it. Heavy snowstorms have knocked a lot down. The J.C. Penney store, which is next to the some cabin that they hauled in, it was one of the original J.C. Penney stores. It finally caved in. The one little bit of irony, in front of the Tinnick Museum, there's a mucking machine there. Unfortunately, it's the Gardner Denver mucking machine. They were never able to get a IMCO, which is where the IMCO mucking machine was invented. One little correction on Hiawatha. It wasn't U.S. Steel. It was U.S. Smelting, Refining, and Mining Company that operated under the name of Utah Fuels Company. But I worked for U.S. Smelting, and the town, before it started getting dismantled, looked very much like all the other U.S. smelting towns. I lived in Lark for a few years, and identical. Very nice towns, and it's too bad that you're so stretched for time. You can spend a whole week there and not run out of things to see. If any of you
Thank
can
you.
get an old Utah Historical Society quarterly book that they put out in '64, I believe, you'd be advised to get it. It's quite a treasure as far as the mining activity in the state and what was being mined at the time, and there's probably still reserves of it left. Any rate, I think you'll have a great time. I wish I could go, but as the saying goes, I'm pretty well stoped out.
Yeah, one other quick comment about Eureka is you're going to see a lot of the handiwork of the EPA there. Those of you that were on our Leadville conference some years ago saw some other work there, but the work that the EPA did in Eureka is very monochromatic, which is kind of unfortunate. Everything is pretty much buried in a gray rock.
Yeah, they brought in limestone and covered all the mine dumps. And also, between them and some of the state agencies, they knocked down a lot of historic head frames. And then the crowning thing, they tore down some of the very impressive ore bins up at mines like the Grand Central. They were recovering the last little bit of gold and silver out of them. They were shipped off the dumps were shipped to nearby Silver City and leached. I think the property owners got very minimal amount per ton, but it was money for them, but it tore down some very beautiful historic structures.
A lot remains, however.
Okay, anybody else? I'm looking forward to going. This is going to be fun.
Well, chalk it up. We'd like to have good attendance, and we've got the capacity for folks. And once again, registration info will be out, what, Barb, early March? Newsletter?
Probably mid-March. Paul?
It's spring break starting Friday, so I'll be drafting probably Sunday and into next week if I can get the rest of it in.
Okay. And I want to thank those of you who renewed your membership either through the newsletter, the January newsletter, or the reminders I've been putting on the Nuggets announcements. We're doing pretty well. But if you haven't renewed, please get that in. The more I have, the fewer letters I need to send out to remind people. And I will be doing that probably mid-April before the conference, so we can get everybody renewed before they attend the conference.
Barbara, what are the dues? It's 30 and what, 60 for patron?
It's 35 for US members, 60 for patron, and 100 for sustaining.
Okay, thanks. I'll try to save you writing a letter.
Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Well, welcome. Well, thank you all for coming. And next month is we're going to do Kelly Clorer is going to show us more of his Comstock reshoots, reshooting old Comstock photographs. So we had a good turnout last year, and maybe we can do that again this year. Okay. So
Great.
bye-bye. See y'all.
Bye.